Previously on X-Men.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 0th episode of our coverage of X-Men 97. We are Bob and Matt from Uncanny Treks. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. We've been covering X-Men 92. We've been putting it up against Young Justice. But now that X-Men 97 is finally here, after a few delays, we are just going to be doing exclusive, free coverage of X-Men 97. Although if you want to hear our thoughts about X-Men 92, if you want to hear our thoughts about Young Justice, the greatest superhero animation show ever, arguably, join us on patreon.com for Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Doing great, Bob. I'm really excited X-Men 97 is coming back.
So originally we had a great idea, Matt. We had a great idea, which was we had a release of the titles of all 10 episodes of season 1 of X-Men 97. And it was, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Matt and Bob, your friends, your podcast bros, they sat down and they speculated about what the episode would be based on the titles. Aimless speculation. It's what the internet runs on, folks. But Disney, they saw that, they heard that, they said that's not valid. And so they went ahead and put out some episode descriptions. And Matt, I gotta say, I'm a little bitter. I think it ruins the premise of the show.
Bob, they didn't just put out descriptions, they put out the synopsis of some of these. This is not the thing you click on the channel or whatever of the episode and it'll tell you what it's about. This is legit telling you all kinds of things that's going to happen the whole season. Like, I have a legit outline of what's going to happen in the season now looking at this, with the exception of the last 3 episodes.
Yeah, they get very vague.
Disney, House of Mouse, something is going to happen in those last 3 episodes, but you want to tell me everything that's going to happen in the first 7. Much appreciation.
Yeah.
They do the same with their trailers, too.
I still haven't seen the X-Men 97 trailer, and dear listeners, I am not the type of nerd who likes to pore over episode titles and descriptions, so if we weren't desperate to feed our beloved listeners content, I wouldn't have even looked at this stuff.
No. Well, I will tell you this, Bob, I bought all the action figures, so I do know some characters that will be appearing. Do you want me to ruin that for you?
If it seems it's a good point to discuss in the course of the episode, bring it up. But otherwise, I'm okay.
All right, that works.
Matt, do we want to just have you read? We'll go one by one. You read the description, and then we'll talk about it a little. Maybe we'll say what we were speculating and how wrong we were or how right we were based on the
that works for me. That works for me.
Cool.
And keep in mind, listeners, if you don't want anything spoiled for X-Men 97, if you haven't read the titles, or you don't want to hear these synopses, then just please stop listening now and go listen to our Patreon podcast.
I wouldn't blame you at all, listener. I wouldn't listen to this episode if I were you. Not because it's bad, but just because I don't like previews. Also, if you have a problem with Morph being non-binary, you should probably stop listening. I don't know that we're going to talk about it, but yeah, screw you. Get over yourself. And then if you want to stick around to the end, we might have some spicy speculation and rumors about why the showrunner got fired. So stick around to the end for that.
All right, Bob. So the first title that we have is Episode 1, To Me, My X-Men, which that line is classic.
Well, and can I say, Matt, at first I assumed that was going to be Magneto saying that, because the finale of X-Men 92 Season 5 has Magneto replacing Xavier as the leader of the X-Men. So I assumed that that's where this show was going. I was wrong, and this is one note of bitterness I'll put in. One of the reasons I don't like the guy who just got fired is that he doesn't seem to understand any X-Men comics after the 90s. And so he doesn't seem to have any use for Emma Frost. He doesn't, as a hero, he doesn't seem to have any use for Magneto as a hero. And that's reflected in this episode description you're about to read.
So I just got done reading Grant Morrison's X-Men run. I had read it previously many years ago. And this run has given me a fresh take on the White Queen and how much of a huge part she has in the X-Men mythos from 2000 on. And
Yeah.
to not see her, but see, she never was I never cared for the character that much because she never was in this series. So now, or I think maybe she was, but no, she was in the pilot Pride of the X-Men. I take that back.
Yeah, well, she's a villain
pilot,
in Pride of the X-Men, but then she's a member of the Hellfire Club during the Dark Phoenix saga.
Yeah, and those are the only times you see her on the screen. So she never really was one of my favorites, or I didn't have much exposure to her. But now she's a pretty pivotal part of the team. I mean,
Morrison definitely makes her front and center, but really I'm wrong because Bo DeMaio, the former showrunner, doesn't like any X-Men comics after the turn of the millennium. But during the 90s, she's a hero too. She's running Generation X with Banshee, and I like that series more than you, but I adore that series. It's really annoying that the showrunners just can't see the potential of Emma Frost as a hero like they did in Wolverine and the X-Men.
right, but let's just be honest. That series, though, that was a secondary title, Bob. You know it. She's nowhere near as popular then as she was now.
She was in live action as a hero because of that series, though. Granted, it was just a TV movie, a failed pilot.
Technically, she was one of the first live-action X-Men that we did see.
But we know the person saying, to me, my X-Men is not Magneto.
So Cyclops races to find the source of new anti-mutant technology that threatens to upset mutant-human relations. His search leads him to an unexpected reunion with an old foe, even as the X-Men welcome a new addition to the team. All right, Bob, so a couple of things here. And I know you didn't watch the trailer, but I know who says to me, my X-Men.
Oh, you wanna spoil it for me?
Yeah, Bob, it's Cyclops.
That's what I was figuring based off the description. Yeah. Do we assume the new addition is Sunspot, or do we think that's a fake out and it's somebody else?
I think it's Sunspot, but there's an episode title later on that makes me think that could be an origin story for that character. So,
okay,
could it be Magneto?
Could it be Magneto? Could it be Morph coming back?
That's a good point too. We have a whole episode on Morph's non-binaryism.
I think non-binariness, but I'm not totally sure.
Non-binariness. I got some new words to learn, Bob.
You do.
Yeah.
Oh man, we are going to have to struggle to keep they them for Morph. It's not out of disrespect, folks. It's just we grew up with them being he in the 90s.
Yeah, my apologies. But
yeah, apologies in advance. So who do you think the old foe is? I mean, Magneto, Sinister, someone else?
Unexpected reunion with an old foe. I mean, I think Sinister's supposed to be the big bad.
That would make sense.
I don't know. Could be a Sentinel.
Right,
I don't know.
We do have that Sentinel head in the preview image. Yeah. Well, so for number 2, we have Mutant Liberation Begins. And I was wondering if this would perhaps bring out the Mutant Liberation Front, which is that X-Force team of villains, often but not always led by Strife. And based off the description, it seems that might be the case. Do you want to read it, Matt?
Yeah, when Magneto is forced by the UN to stand trial, a group of anti-mutant rioters test his resolve. And you got Magneto standing trial. He's got his outfit, I know, because we have an action figure of him in that outfit, and we've seen some stills of that from the trial of Magneto.
Which outfit are you talking about?
The big M that he wore during the trial of Magneto in the comics.
Yeah. And this does sound like an adaptation. I believe is that Uncanny X-Men 200. That's the trial of Magneto. Yes. Yeah, this sounds like a loose adaptation of that. And interestingly, or maybe just an example of corporate synchronicity, I believe it's one of the current Fall of the X miniseries. Maybe it's Fall of the House of X, just redid this scenario with Cyclops standing trial instead of Magneto.
Right. So we're going to see. I have a feeling we'll see Magneto on trial. We'll see that classic image of him in restraints with the stupid M suit on. And I don't know that maybe they'll prove that whatever he did was not. What's he on trial for in this case, do you think?
Well, and that's interesting because I thought he was basically, I can't remember the specifics, but I thought after season 4 and season 5 he was basically okay with the UN.
Yeah, he didn't. I don't remember there being an issue.
Yeah,
I mean, unless they come up with something, unless he does something in the first episode.
Yeah, maybe that could very well be. If it's anything like which it probably won't be, but if it's anything like issue number 200, long parts of it will be dedicated to Magneto destroying a Russian submarine and to arguing that Magneto can't be held responsible for his actions because he got de-aged to a baby and then regrown to a human, and so legally he's exempt from all charges before he got de-aged.
I don't remember that happening in the show, so That would be a really, really fun. That'd be a really fun episode, and really stupid too at the same time. Wow, X-Men is wild.
X-Men is wild. You do remember that early Claremont Magneto arc, right, where he basically imprisons all the X-Men in fetish gear to make them experience what it's like being a baby.
I do remember all that. Yes, it was insane.
It was deeply insane. It was marvelous. I guess to move on to episode 3, I wanted to gloat about this one because not that it's that impressive, but I totally called that it was a Phoenix episode. But now no one will believe me just because the episode is here.
Yeah. Well, fire made flesh, Bob. You're absolutely right with the description. There's no way this is a Sunspot origin story. So, when a visitor arrives at the mansion with a dangerous secret that threatens Cyclops and Jean's relationship, the team is propelled into a tragic confrontation with an immortal mad scientist.
Oh man, I missed that last part when I was looking over that. So I assume that's Sinister.
So we have Sinister, and I believe that he has created. I think the Jean Grey that has been on the show is actually Madeline Pryor. Or that a clone was created of Jean Grey, and then Cyclops had a baby with Jean Grey with Madeline Pryor, and then that baby is going to.
The Visitor is the original. Your prediction, which sounds very plausible to me, is the original Visitor the first Visitor in the episode description is the original Jean Grey, and then we will find out our Jean Grey is Madeline Pryor.
That is correct.
That seems very plausible. Yeah. It's interesting. I guess the 90s are really in vogue. It's interesting that they're basically just going to do the Clone Saga, but for X-Men.
Yeah, they are. And then Fire Made Flesh makes sense because then it's okay. He made a human clone of Phoenix, or tried to.
Matt, have I told you my hot take from having now read about 180 issues of Amazing Spider-Man?
What's your hot take, Bob?
So the people say the original Clone Saga in the 70s is good, and they're right. It's a very good story. It's a great story, in fact. But then they say the 90s Clone Saga is bad, right?
Right.
And then, do you remember what story Sins Past is?
Vaguely, yes.
That's the JMS story where Gwen Stacy's adult children that she had via Norman Osborn show up.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it's one of the last stories in the JMS, and it's a deeply hated story. So both the 90s Clone Saga and Gwen and Norman's children showing up have very bad reputations among Spider-Man fans. Like you, I read part of the Clone Saga as a kid, never really got the full picture. And I never read the Gwen's kids show up. Never read Since Past. Just knew people hated it. I've got to say, I'm not saying that 90s Clone Saga and the Gwen's kids are good stories. I haven't read them. I don't know. But people get really angry at the premises of both stories. And after having read 180 issues of Amazing Spider-Man, I don't think that anger at the premises is legitimate. Both of those are very, very fair interpretations of what goes on in early Amazing Spider-Man. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I mean, I think people just weren't happy because they hadn't read as much Spider-Man as they claimed to.
Yeah. Or maybe they did read it, but they read it a long time ago, and it just violated a sense they had of what it was.
Yeah.
But literally in the big fight between Spider-Man and his clone is 149. There's absolutely no way to track in that fight who's the original and who's not. There's no way to track it.
Yeah.
And then when he disposes of the body of what we are to assume is the clone, he then goes to Kirk Connors for a test to see if he's the clone. And he never reads the results. He tears the results up. So obviously you have to do the story later where he's the clone. Obviously.
Yeah. Well, Bob.
And then, the other thing is just in general, the late Spider-Man, like when Stan Lee is still writing it, the 70s, the 80s, that reign, that generally is just a weird run of comics because Flash and Harry and Gwen and Mary Jane and Peter spend way, way, way too much time hanging out with the adults. They are way, way too much time with Norman, with JJJ, with Aunt May, with Aunt Anna, way too much time.
Yeah.
And then there's, I believe it's Spectacular Spider-Man #1. It's a magazine link story where they're all having dinner at Norman Osborn's creepy gothic mansion. And it's just way too much time with the fathers and the guardians of their college friends. And it is entirely plausible that Norman slept with Gwen. Entirely plausible. You may not like it, but I'm sorry. The subtext is there in those issues.
Yeah. See, and I think that's probably part a lot of people miss is that they did build some subtext previously that just was glossed over when you were actually reading it. Unless you go back and read it again. All right, Bob, so let's talk about episode 4, though. This one is the one I'm the most excited for, probably the one you're the least excited for. It's called
Yep.
It's called Motendo. Now, we know Mojo, so that's why there's the Mo. Nintendo, Bob, implies Nintendo, which is a video game machine. And here's the summary. On her birthday, a nostalgic Jubilee is forced to relive the X-Men's greatest adventures when an entertainment system transports her into a 16-bit video game. That is going to be an awesome episode. I cannot wait.
Ah, man. Will I even watch that episode? Maybe that episode will just be you describing what happens to me.
Yeah, I cannot wait for that episode. But then, Bob, on top of this, though, it's not just Motendo is the name of the title. It has a slash, Motendo / Life Death Part 1. So there's 2 stories going on here that are, one is probably more important than the other, but I'm here for the Motendo.
So, Matt, do you know what Life Death is from the original Claremont run?
I think it was a story about Storm and Forge, and didn't Storm lose her powers?
It's after Storm has lost her powers because of Forge's mutant gun, and she's chilling with Forge in his Dallas skyscraper. That's a Uncanny X-Men 186, which I had the classic X-Men reprint of it, so I think you read that too.
So here's my thought, Bob. What if in Life Death, Bob, Forge has this gun and is trying to, and Storm has to convince him not to let people have it or use it?
No, they wouldn't.
So?
They're not going to do that. No. Well, have you seen Forge in any of the promo materials?
No, I have not.
I would assume that they're not going to do Forge and Storm losing her powers at all. I could be wrong, but I would assume no, especially because it's only half of a 25-minute episode.
Yeah.
And then there's also a sequel, Life Death 2. I believe that's Uncanny X-Men 198. And that's Storm reflecting on herself back in Africa. And spoilers, that's what episode 6 is, right?
Right.
So I see a couple interesting possibilities here. Well, I don't know that they're actually interesting because I will say these are the episodes I'm least a fan of because I hate Mojo. I'm not a big Jubilee fan. And then I like Storm, but I do not like the life-death issues. I think they're super pretentious. They're super boring. They have a great reputation among X-Men fans in general. X-Men fans love them. But I don't. I think they're Claremont at its worst and most overwrought, and not how I prefer to see Storm. Does that make sense?
It does, but we can probably say that the life-death piece is going to be focused on Storm. We know that much, at least.
I see a couple possibilities here. Is Storm going through some version of Life Death Part 1? Is that part of the 16-bit video game Jubilee is experiencing in Mojo World? Or is it just a separate story? Or is it half the episode is Jubilee and Mojo Super Friend style, and then Super Friend style half is Storm doing Life Death?
I think it's the Super Friends thing.
Yeah. Or is it Jubilee doing a life death scenario as she goes through Mojo's Nintendo? All of these are possible.
Oh,
Probably.
Good.
You're betting on the Super Friends division, I'm hearing?
Yes, I'm thinking that.
I think I'm betting on it just being intertwined. It's part Jubilee and Mojo World, part a Storm solo story. But I do think it's funny to think about the different possibilities of how they could do this. And we should also note that there's no mention of a life-death plot in the episode summary, right? It's just a Nintendo plot. Yeah. But on the one hand, don't like life-death, don't like Mojo. On the other hand, I guess I'll at least be intellectually entertained by how they do this, right? Because there's several different possibilities, so it'll be interesting to see what they zero in on.
All right, Bob. So in episode 5, Remember It. As Genosha prepares to join the UN, select members of the team head to the island nation to be honorees. Back at the mansion, a behind-the-scenes press event risks airing the X-Men's dirty laundry. All right, Bob, what were we supposed to remember?
I don't know, man. I mean, I have questions about... I guess I should go back and look, but I can't remember what the current status of Genosha in X-Men Season 5 is, or where it's going to be here. Is it still going to be they're oppressing mutants? Is it going to be they're trying to do a post-apartheid South Africa thing if we no longer oppress mutants? Is there going to be mutants ruling Genosha? Many possibilities. No idea what the it is. No idea what the dirty laundry is. So many questions about this one. When I was guessing, I guessed this was a Shadow King episode setting up Life Death, and I was totally wrong about that.
Well, Bob, do you not remember Gambit's name?
Oh, so is this Gambit?
The name's Gambit. Remember it.
So this is Gambit doing something for Mr. Sinister.
I don't know, Bob. I don't know. Something here. That's
this might be the equivalent of in the 90s. You had that plot of Gambit set up the mutant massacre.
Yes, that's what I'm seeing here. Getting that idea, getting that impression.
Well, that at least makes me happy because one of my overall complaints, an observation was just going to be that no Wolverine plots at all, which I have no problem with. But it's surprising. But then I was actually sad that no Rogue and Gambit plots. So this at least would correct me on that.
Well, don't worry, Bob, because I'm going to go ahead and call it here where it says select members of the team head to the island nation to be honorees. It's going to be Beast, Wolverine, and Rogue.
Okay. I mean, based on how X-Men Season 4 and 5 rolls and who it focuses on, that's a very good guess.
Yeah, they're the ones. All right, Bob. Episode 6.
I think we already covered Life Death, right?
Yeah, Episode 6, Life Death Part 2. Storm is forced to face her worst fears in order to free herself. Well, we know one of Storm's biggest fears is being trapped inside something small. She has claustrophobia. Is that going to play into this?
Matt, you could just read the comic.
This sounds like a Shadow King episode.
No, just read
X-Men Life Death.
No. Well, no, I don't think you should because I don't think it's good. But this one is the easiest. You read Uncanny X-Men 198, and this is going to be a pretty straightforward adaptation of that. I would put money on that.
Bob believes it. Okay, Bob. I gotcha. So what about Episode 7, Bob? Bright Eyes. What's that about?
Well, this is another one where I was very proud of myself for calling that it was going to be a Cyclops spotlight episode, and then Disney just has to make it where everybody doesn't believe I called it, and I'm just big-upping myself.
Well, Bob, this says Cyclops focuses the X-Men on finding Bolivar Trask. However, when the team locates the Sentinel inventor, they realize that they all have been played by a mastermind.
That mastermind's name? Mr. Sinister.
Master Mold.
Oh,
I'm kidding. I don't know.
So
I don't know.
We got the three obvious candidates would be Master Mold, Mr. Sinister, and Jason Wingard. So
I want Master Mold back again for the 4th time.
Man, after we watched we haven't put it out for our dear listeners on Patreon yet, but when we watched the Age of Apocalypse 2-parter of X-Men 97, Master Mold ruled in that. Yeah. He was such a catty guy. It ruled.
Yeah. With the name of the title of this episode, Bob, Bright Eyes, I thought the whole episode was going to be focused on Rogue zapping Cyclops' powers and having.
That would have been a really good. Yeah, that would have been a really good guess. Yeah, that's a really good guess. Yeah. All right, Matt. Well, we have the least to say about the last 3, so do you want to just read all 3 descriptions?
That's right, Bob. The last 3 episodes are entitled Tolerance is Extinction. They have Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3. But in Episode 8, it says the X-Men must unite to face a new threat. A new threat. So we don't know what the new threat is. So that's not Mr. Sinister, I'm assuming.
I almost wonder if they're maybe going to do the mutant cure from Astonishing X-Men and X-Men 3.
I could see that. That would be good, but Episode
good
9...
would be a strong word, Matt, but it would certainly be a story.
Yeah. Now, Episode 9, Bob, the X-Men work to settle the score before it is too late. These are very generic and written by AI, it sounds like. They even left the period off.
No, I believe somebody actually wrote these. These are so generic and they want to avoid spoilers that I think it was intentionally written by a human trying to sound like AI rather than AI.
All right, Bob, and then Episode 10... The X-Men's dream is put to the test as mutant-human relations reach a tipping point.
Hey-o.
So, I don't know, Bob. Tolerance is extinction. There's nothing called that in X-Men continuity anywhere.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's extinction agenda, stuff like that. But yeah, no. As far as I know, I'm not thinking of any tolerance as extinction. If I were guessing, I would guessing the cure from Astonishing X-Men and X-Men 3, but I could be totally wrong. I don't have strong feeling in that department.
Well, Bob, I mean, the episode titles, they have me still excited for this show. but at the same time, I'm still wanting more, which maybe that's a good thing. I want to watch it, but at the same time, I'm worried about maybe we're going to. I'm hoping we get more than one season. We get one more than one season. That's right. I believe so. They said that we have season 2 already.
I think they
Written.
ordered it for 2 seasons. Apparently, the showrunner, the former showrunner, Bo DeMayo, had just finished writing season 2, and he was in brainstorming mode on season 3 when Disney abruptly fired him.
Okay, why'd they fire him, Bob?
There are many rumors, Matt. There are many rumors. It's worth saying that a lot of people don't like Bo DeMayo for a lot of different reasons. I don't like him because he doesn't seem he's read an X-Men comic after the year 2000. And specifically of what he said about Emma Frost, I find very irritating. Anti-woke people don't like him because he's gay and Latino. Woke people don't like him because they feel he whitewashed Sunspot with the voice actor. Let's just not even get into that. And then I think Witcher fans tend to not like him because when he was writing for The Witcher, he allegedly made fun of The Witcher, and to which I say, that's great. I really salute him for that. The Witcher deserves to be made fun of.
Witcher's awesome.
And then, yeah.
I love The Witcher.
Bo DeMayo and I will not shut up about making fun of The Witcher.
Bo DeMayo, the first season of The Witcher is actually pretty good, Bob. It's everything after that that's crap. The games and the books, they're awesome too. So screw you and your opinion of The Witcher.
I have no idea what part of the show he is responsible for. And then he was responsible for some of Moon Knight, and so I would like to think that anybody who'd seen Moon Knight would hold a grudge against everyone involved in that. Yeah. So, controversial guy. He does have a tendency to be combative on social media, so you could see him getting fired for that, although it's pretty strange timing the week before the show premieres when he has publicity book. Anti-woke people are implying that he did some sort of heinous crime, but I think that's mostly just anti-woke people being slanderous. There's a somewhat more convincing rumor going around that I don't, is just a rumor. No idea if it's true. Funny if it is true. Also sad and messed up that allegedly he has an OnlyFans and showed a dick pic on it. That Disney would fire him for that, I think, is utterly ridiculous. So, I would believe it. I think, from what I understand, Disney has pretty stringent morals clauses in their contracts that they selectively enforce. I think we'll still get season 2. Whether we'll get season 3 from a different person or not, I have no idea. It's really hard to say.
What really freaks me out, Bob, is this dude is our age, so he watched the original X-Men episodes the same way we did.
Yeah.
There's just something weird about that.
Matt, you mean he did a podcast with it about Young Justice?
No, Bob. I'm saying he watched them in
I know,
'92 when they were airing, like we did. Cool.
Yeah. But then he didn't read the Grant Morrison run.
Yeah, but then he just stopped.
I'm not saying he has to read everything after the Turn of the Millennium. I'm just saying read the Grant Morrison run. Read House of X and Powers of 10. I didn't like the guy's opinions on X-Men, but getting fired in this way is crappy. It sounds like he was probably fired for Disney being ridiculous, not for any good reason. So I wish him well. I hope he lands somewhere where he can keep working. And I respect his disdain for The Witcher. Let me just at least say that his disdain for 21st century X-Men, not here for, but his disdain for The Witcher, I'm here for.
All right, Bob. So X-Men 97 drops on March 20th.
That's a Wednesday. God, this is embarrassing. I'm watching the last season of Bad Batch, that Star Wars cartoon.
Oh yeah.
And that also drops on Wednesdays.
Oh, okay.
God, I'm so ashamed. I don't
care. Is that any good?
Good's a strong term.
Is it worth watching? It's got Rhea Perlman. It's got Rhea Perlman and Wanda Sykes, Bob.
I would not say Bad Batch is worth watching. I mean, certainly, look, the reason to watch Bad Batch is that you've watched all of Clone Wars and all of Rebels and you want more. That's the only reason. If there's any Clone Wars or any Rebels you haven't seen, you ought to watch that first.
All right, well, then I will not be watching Bad Batch for a very long time.
Okay. Right. I would also say, though, even though I don't like Bad Batch that much, you should definitely watch Bad Batch before you watch any of The Mandalorian or The Book of Boba Fett or Obi-Wan Kenobi, all of which are terrible.
Well, Bob, the first 2 episodes, I believe, are dropping on Wednesday. So we'll be covering both episodes and have our coverage of that will drop the following week, right?
Yeah, we'll record next Saturday on those first 2 episodes, and then hopefully drop it Saturday, Sunday that weekend.
All right. Well, we look forward to it, Bob.
All right. Join us for X-Men 97 on the public feed of Uncanny Treks. Join us for our resuming coverage of X-Men 92 and Young Justice on Patreon. There's a huge backlog already. We've already done the first 2 seasons. We're starting up the first 2 seasons of Young Justice, I should say. The first 3 seasons of X-Men 97 or X-Men 92, and then we're starting up the 4th season of X-Men 92. So join us on Patreon for that. We hope to see you there. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks for listening.